You check your phone. No message, no reply. And suddenly your mind fills the silence with fear, doubt, and questions. But what if the truth is that love doesn't always text? What if sometimes when a man is falling in love, he grows quiet not because he feels less, but because he feels too much? Silence in men is often misunderstood because modern culture treats expression as proof of emotion. If something is not spoken, typed, or immediately visible, it is assumed not to exist. From a psychological perspective, especially one informed by Carl Jung's understanding of the male psyche, silence frequently represents inner activity rather than emotional absence. Many men are conditioned from an early age to process emotions internally. They are taught to observe, contain, and manage feelings privately before allowing them to surface. When love begins to form, this pattern intensifies instead of dissolving. For a man, falling in love is not always a smooth emotional expansion. It can feel like a disruption to the identity he has carefully constructed. Jung described the ego as something that seeks stability and control. Love challenges both. It introduces uncertainty, vulnerability, and emotional exposure, which the ego often experiences as a threat. When this happens, a man may not reach outward. He may turn inward. Silence becomes a psychological buffer, a space where the unconscious attempts to reorganize itself around a new emotional reality. This inner processing is rarely calm. Love activates fears that have little to do with the person he is loving and everything to do with unresolved material within him. Fear of loss, fear of inadequacy, fear of dependence, fear of repeating past wounds. These fears do not announce themselves clearly. They operate beneath awareness, creating tension that the man may not yet understand. Because he lacks language for this internal shift, he withdraws into quiet observation, not to escape the feeling, but to understand it without destabilizing his outer life. Jung believed that what remains unconscious expresses itself indirectly. In this sense, silence is not emptiness, but containment. The man is holding something significant without yet knowing how to articulate it. Words require clarity. Silence allows ambiguity. And love, in its early stages, is often ambiguous even to the one experiencing it. He may sense that something important is happening, but feel uncertain about its implications. Speaking too soon feels dangerous. Acting impulsively feels irresponsible. So he waits internally, listening to his own reactions, measuring his emotional responses, testing whether this feeling is temporary or transformative. Another reason silence appears is that love threatens autonomy. For many men, independence is deeply tied to self-worth. Loving someone introduces emotional interdependence, which can feel like a loss of control if not yet integrated into the psyche. Jung referred to this tension as part of individuation, the process of becoming whole. Love forces a man to confront parts of himself he has neglected, especially emotional sensitivity and relational depth. Silence becomes a protective pause while the psyche negotiates this expansion without collapsing under it. Importantly, this form of silence is not passive. Internally, there is reflection, rehearsal, and emotional monitoring. He replays interactions, analyzes his reactions, and notices how his priorities are shifting. He may not text, but he thinks. He may not speak, but he remembers. He may not express longing directly, but his attention quietly reorganizes itself around the person he loves. Jung emphasized that attention is psychic energy. Where attention goes, meaning follows. This is why silence should not be judged in isolation. In Jungian psychology, behavior must be observed in patterns, not moments. If silence exists alongside consistency, awareness, and subtle care, it is often a sign of internal depth rather than withdrawal. The man is not emotionally absent. He is emotionally occupied. He is allowing the feeling to settle into his inner structure before giving it form. This process takes time, especially for those who were never taught how to externalize emotions safely. The danger arises only when silence is paired with avoidance, inconsistency, or disregard. Jung never romanticized unconscious behavior. He believed awareness must eventually follow. But before awareness comes incubation. Silence is the incubation stage of love, where emotion is being formed into something stable enough to live in the outer world, something that does not collapse under pressure, something that can be sustained without betrayal of the self. When a man is falling in love, his behavior often reflects an internal struggle between desire and restraint, between instinct and reflection. In the modern world, we tend to equate love with pursuit, with constant messages, frequent attention, and visible declarations of affection. Yet, from a Jungian perspective, genuine love frequently manifests in restraint rather than outward display. This restraint is not a lack of feeling, but a careful negotiation between the conscious self and the unconscious impulses that love awakens. Jung taught that the human psyche seeks balance, and love can destabilize it by confronting long-held patterns of control, independence, and self-protection. When a man restrains himself, he is often protecting the very essence of what he feels, attempting to integrate a powerful emotion into the structure of his identity without losing the integrity of his ego. This restraint becomes particularly pronounced when the man experiences fear alongside affection. Falling in love exposes vulnerability, which can feel threatening to a psyche that has been conditioned to prioritize self-sufficiency. Jung described this process as a confrontation with the anima, the inner feminine aspect of the male psyche, which represents intuition, emotional depth, and relational sensitivity. Many men grow up suppressing this part of themselves, and love forces it to the surface. In this awakening, the psyche feels unbalanced. The intensity of emotion may overwhelm the rational ego, prompting withdrawal or silence. The restraint seen in his behavior is a psychological pause, a way to regulate and integrate emotions without acting impulsively or destructively. Restraint also reflects a deeper sense of responsibility toward the relationship itself. Men who are truly in love understand, often subconsciously, that emotions must be cultivated with care. They may choose silence over speech, distance over impulsivity, precisely because they recognize that acting prematurely can harm both themselves and the object of their affection. Jung emphasized that actions originating from the unconscious without conscious integration can be harmful or chaotic. Therefore, a man's deliberate restraint is a manifestation of the unconscious mind, attempting to bring order to powerful emotions before expressing them externally. Furthermore, this restraint often appears as a preference for subtlety in communication and action. He may think of you constantly, notice details that others might overlook, and adjust his behavior in ways that include you without explicitly stating it. This internal attentiveness reflects a deep engagement with the relationship that transcends verbal expression. Jung believed that meaningful connections are frequently encoded in the unconscious patterns of attention and care, rather than in direct articulation. When a man restrains himself, he is often observing, internalizing, and planning, waiting until his emotions are coherent enough to express responsibly. Restraint can also emerge from past experiences, wounds, or fears of repeating relational patterns. Men who have experienced loss, betrayal, or emotional instability may approach love cautiously. Jungian psychology suggests that the unconscious carries these memories and archetypal patterns, influencing present behavior even when it is not fully understood. By restraining himself, a man is unconsciously protecting both his vulnerability and the potential relationship from the turbulence of unresolved past experiences. His silence is not disinterest. It is a form of emotional self-regulation that preserves the potential for authentic connection. It is important to understand that this restraint is not a passive state. It is an active process of inner reflection, adjustment, and preparation. While he may not reach out frequently or display affection overtly, the psyche is engaged in a profound internal dialogue. He measures his feelings, considers the implications of his actions, and monitors the alignment between his desires and his principles. Jung would argue that this internal work is essential for the formation of a stable, mature love, one that is not merely reactive or superficial, but grounded in self-awareness and intentionality. This behavior challenges the cultural assumption that love must always be performative. Restraint, from a Jungian perspective, is a sign of depth, maturity, and conscious integration. A man who exercises restraint is often doing so to reconcile powerful emotions with his inner sense of self, balancing instinct with reflection, desire with discipline, and feeling with responsibility. The third silent sign of a man's love lies in his actions when presence matters more than performance. In the Jungian framework, love is not only an emotion, but a transformative process that organizes the psyche toward responsibility, awareness, and care. Words are often insufficient to express the depth of this transformation, particularly in men who have been culturally or psychologically conditioned to restrain emotional expression. Thus, the genuine manifestation of love frequently emerges in deeds rather than declarations. A man who does not text constantly but consistently shows up in meaningful ways is signaling his attachment and commitment through the language of action rather than the transient symbols of conversation. This form of love is subtle and often overlooked because it does not demand immediate recognition. A man who silently loves will pay attention to the rhythms of your life, noticing what is unsaid, perceiving what is needed, and offering support in ways that are tangible yet unobtrusive. Jung described such manifestations as the interplay of conscious and unconscious energies, where the unconscious channels the depth of feeling into behaviors that sustain the object of affection. This may include ensuring your comfort, responding to emotional shifts, or safeguarding your well-being without requiring acknowledgement. These acts are expressions of a psychic energy directed outward, demonstrating love as an integrative and sustaining force rather than a fleeting sentiment. What distinguishes this behavior is that it is grounded in responsibility. Men often associate love with protection, stability, and reliability, which is why their care frequently manifests in observable outcomes rather than verbal assurances. From a Jungian perspective, the psyche seeks wholeness, and love is one of the most potent forces for integration. When a man acts to preserve the harmony of someone he loves, he is extending his own inner development toward relational growth. His silence in speech is compensated by consistency in action, creating a pattern of behavior that communicates attachment more powerfully than words alone. Another dimension of this silent expression is attentiveness to subtle cues. Jung emphasized that the unconscious communicates through symbols and patterns, and in human relationships, these patterns can take the form of observation and responsiveness. A man in love may not articulate his feelings because he is attuned to the emotional and practical needs of his partner, responding intuitively before being asked. This attentiveness is a profound signal of affection because it indicates that his mind and heart are oriented toward you even without explicit confirmation. The absence of words does not imply absence of care. It indicates a sophisticated interplay between perception, intention, and action that reflects unconscious depth. The manifestation of love through action rather than speech also reflects the process of individuation. Jung proposed that true relational maturity occurs when individuals integrate the unconscious aspects of their psyche, including emotional sensitivity, empathy, and relational insight. For many men, love acts as a catalyst for this integration. The behaviors you observe, checking in quietly, assisting without fanfare, being present in challenging situations, are the outward traces of a profound internal alignment. The psyche is organizing itself around the value of care, translating feelings into tangible acts that reinforce connection and trust. Additionally, these acts of silent love are often consistent over time, forming patterns that reveal intentionality. Jung understood that consistency reflects a deeper alignment between the conscious self and unconscious impulses. A man's reliability in presence and action, even in the absence of verbal or digital affirmation, is evidence of a love that has moved beyond mere infatuation into commitment and responsibility. This silent devotion is not contingent on recognition or reward. It is a manifestation of an internal moral and emotional architecture that values the well-being of another as inseparable from the integrity of the self. Understanding this silent sign requires reframing cultural assumptions about love. Modern society equates emotional expression with textual affirmation, but Jungian psychology shows that the most profound forms of attachment often speak in actions that require observation, intuition, and emotional literacy. By attuning to these behaviors, one can discern a love that is stable, nurturing, and enduring, grounded in both conscious intention and unconscious depth, where presence itself becomes the language of the heart. In the modern imagination, love has become increasingly associated with digital presence. Messages, replies, and online visibility are treated as emotional currency, creating the illusion that frequency equals depth. Yet from a Jungian perspective, this equation misunderstands the nature of genuine attachment. The psyche does not bond through symbols alone, but through lived experience. Consistent presence in real life carries a psychological weight that digital attention cannot replicate because it engages the body, the senses, and the unconscious in ways that screens never can. Carl Jung emphasized that the unconscious is formed through direct experience rather than abstraction. Physical presence allows the psyche to register safety, reliability, and emotional attunement on a level that words alone cannot reach. When a man consistently shows up in real situations, listens without distraction, remembers your patterns, and remains available when life becomes difficult, he is offering something far more intimate than text-based reassurance. This kind of presence communicates commitment through behavior rather than performance, which is why it often goes unnoticed in a culture trained to prioritize visible signals over grounded ones. A man who loves deeply may not feel compelled to constantly affirm that love digitally because his sense of connection is anchored elsewhere. His attachment is expressed through shared reality rather than symbolic exchange. Jung would argue that such behavior reflects an integrated psyche, one that does not seek validation through constant external confirmation. Instead, the man invests his psychic energy into maintaining stability, predictability, and continuity in the relationship. His love becomes something lived rather than announced, something embedded in routine rather than dramatized through language. This distinction is especially important when understanding male expressions of care. Many men are socialized to equate love with responsibility rather than expression. They demonstrate attachment by being dependable, by showing up consistently, by offering solutions, protection, or practical support. In Jungian terms, this reflects a grounding of emotional energy into action, where feeling is translated into structure. The man may not narrate his emotions, but he builds a relational environment in which those emotions can exist safely. Digital attention, by contrast, often operates at the level of the ego. It is immediate, reactive, and easily distorted by anxiety or insecurity. Real-life presence requires patience, effort, and emotional regulation. It asks the man to remain engaged even when the moment is uncomfortable, mundane, or challenging. Jung believed that maturity is revealed through the ability to endure rather than escape. A man who consistently remains present in real situations, even without verbal affirmation, is demonstrating a form of love rooted in endurance rather than stimulation. Another Jungian layer to this dynamic lies in projection. Texting allows people to project idealized versions of themselves and others, while physical presence collapses illusion. A man who chooses real-life consistency over constant digital contact is often seeking authenticity rather than fantasy. He wants to know who you are beyond words, beyond curated messages, beyond emotional performance. His love grows through observation, shared silence, and mutual reality. This kind of connection develops slowly, but it is far more resilient because it is grounded in truth rather than imagination. This does not mean that communication lacks importance, but Jung warned against confusing the symbol with the substance. Words, messages, and emojis are symbols of connection, not connection itself. When a man prioritizes being there when it matters, remembering what affects you, and aligning his actions with your well-being, he is communicating love in a language older than speech. The unconscious understands presence as safety. Repeated presence creates trust. Trust creates attachment. Attachment creates love that does not depend on constant reinforcement. When evaluating love, the psyche responds more strongly to patterns than promises. A man who reliably appears in your real life, who remains emotionally available through action, and who integrates you into the structure of his daily existence, is expressing something far deeper than fleeting digital engagement. Jung would view this as the psyche committing to relationship not as an emotional impulse, but as a lived orientation toward another human being, where love becomes less about expression and more about alignment, continuity, and shared reality as it unfolds over time and circumstance. Protection, awareness, and quiet concern are among the most instinctive expressions of male attachment, yet they are often overlooked because they operate beneath the level of conscious performance. From a Jungian perspective, these behaviors arise from the deeper layers of the psyche, where instinct, archetype, and emotion converge. When a man begins to love, something ancient within him is activated, something older than language, older than modern dating expectations. Love awakens the protector archetype, not as dominance or control, but as an orientation towards safeguarding what feels meaningful and vulnerable. This protection does not always look dramatic. It is subtle, often invisible to those who expect love to be loud. He becomes more aware of your environment, your emotional state, your safety, and your energy. He notices small shifts in your mood. He remembers what unsettles you. He becomes attentive to factors that might affect your well-being, even if he never names this concern directly. Jung believed that the unconscious expresses itself through attention and instinctive response long before it reaches conscious articulation. In this sense, protection begins as awareness. You occupy space in his psyche, and that space naturally invites vigilance. Quiet concern is particularly revealing because it does not seek recognition. A man acting from ego wants appreciation. A man acting from instinct acts because he cannot not act. His concern emerges naturally, without calculation. He checks whether you arrived safely, not to earn approval, but because the thought arises uninvited. He adjusts his behavior to avoid causing you stress. He holds back words that might harm rather than heal. These gestures are small, but Jung would argue that small, consistent behaviors reveal the true orientation of the psyche more accurately than grand declarations. This instinctive care is also tied to emotional regulation. When a man loves, he becomes more conscious of the impact of his actions. Jung described love as a force that draws unconscious material into awareness. A man who is developing feelings may become quieter, more thoughtful, more deliberate. He does not want to disrupt the emotional equilibrium of the connection. His silence is not detachment, but caution. He is learning where you are sensitive, where you are strong, and how to move within that emotional landscape without causing harm. Protection also manifests as boundary awareness. Contrary to popular belief, love does not always push toward closeness. Sometimes it creates respectful distance. A man may step back when he senses you are overwhelmed. He may give you space rather than demand reassurance. Jungian psychology recognizes this as a sign of empathy rather than indifference. The psyche has recognized another as separate, real, and worthy of respect. This recognition is essential for genuine love, which Jung distinguished from projection or possession. Another layer of quiet concern appears in how he responds to threats, not necessarily physical ones, but emotional or situational stresses. He becomes alert when something undermines your stability. He may not confront directly, but he remains present, observant, and ready. This readiness is an unconscious commitment. Jung would see it as the psyche reorganizing itself around the value of another person's well-being. Love, in this sense, is not a feeling that comes and goes, but a restructuring of priorities. What makes these signs difficult to recognize is that they lack drama. They do not announce themselves. They are woven into ordinary moments. Jung emphasized that the unconscious reveals itself through patterns rather than statements. If a man consistently demonstrates awareness, adjusts behavior to protect emotional balance, and carries quiet concern without demanding anything in return, his psyche has already assigned you significance. You matter enough to influence his instinctive responses. This form of love is often misunderstood because it does not align with cultural narratives that equate affection with verbal reassurance or constant contact. But Jungian psychology invites us to look deeper, to observe where psychic energy flows. A man who loves quietly directs his energy toward preservation rather than performance. He does not need to convince himself or others of his feelings. His concern exists whether or not it is acknowledged. These instincts develop gradually and grow stronger with time, becoming more refined and attuned. The man becomes increasingly sensitive to your inner state, more careful with his words, more consistent in his presence. His protection evolves from simple awareness into emotional stewardship, where your sense of safety becomes intertwined with his sense of integrity, where caring for you feels inseparable from remaining true to himself, where love lives not in declaration, but in the silent vigilance of someone who has unconsciously decided that your well-being matters enough to guard it, even in moments of distance, uncertainty, or silence. In Jungian psychology, love is inseparable from the process of individuation, the lifelong movement toward becoming a whole and integrated self. This makes love far more than an emotion or attachment. It becomes a psychological task. When a man begins to love, he is not simply drawn toward another person, but toward parts of himself that have long remained unconscious. Love exposes contradictions within him, places where desire conflicts with fear, where intimacy challenges autonomy, and where emotional depth confronts long-standing defenses. Because of this, love often develops internally long before it becomes visible or verbal. Jung believed that many men grow up identifying primarily with the ego, the rational, controlled, socially acceptable part of the psyche. Emotional vulnerability, intuition, and relational sensitivity are often pushed into the unconscious, forming what Jung called the anima. When love appears, it activates this suppressed inner world. The man does not simply feel affection, he experiences an inner imbalance. Old structures that once defined him begin to feel insufficient. Silence often accompanies this phase because the psyche is undergoing reorganization. He is not avoiding love, but integrating it. This integration requires time. Love that has not been integrated tends to be impulsive, unstable, or performative. Jung warned that emotions not brought into consciousness can act destructively. A man who values integrity may instinctively slow down when love emerges. He does not want to express feelings he has not yet understood. He does not want to promise what he cannot yet sustain. His silence is an ethical pause, a way of ensuring that what he offers is aligned with who he is becoming rather than who he has been. Love does not always announce itself through words, messages, or constant reassurance. Sometimes it moves quietly, shaping behavior, attention, and inner priorities long before it reaches language. When a man loves, especially from a place of psychological depth, his feelings may first appear as silence, restraint, presence, protection, and inner transformation. These are not the signs of emotional absence, but of emotional seriousness. Love that grows from the unconscious is careful. It does not rush to perform. It seeks to integrate, to stabilize, to become something that can endure rather than impress. Carl Jung reminded us that the deepest truths of the psyche reveal themselves through patterns, not declarations. When you learn to observe consistency over communication, action over affirmation, and awareness over appearance, you begin to recognize love in its most mature form. A man who is becoming whole does not give love lightly. He allows it to reshape him first, and when love finally speaks, it does not come as noise or urgency, but as clarity, steadiness, and presence that no silence could ever contradict.